Welcome back to Weekend Walkabout in our gardens and yours virtually.
We're coming to you from gardenaz.org. I'm Stephen Nicola.
I'm Janet Konovich, and we're talking today about collectors' gardens, how you go about harmonizing the diversity in the collectors' gardens. There is a note-taking guide. I'm sorry I didn't get it posted until quite late last night, but it is there, and you're probably going to want that list of plants because it's a list that was made by one of the premier perennial people in the world, which you'll hear about in just a minute. Just to clarify though what a collector is, this is part of the White Garden at Sissinghurst Castle, Vita Sackville West's famous garden. And you say, we're collecting white things, but you know, that geranium looks kind of purpley to me in there because we see a plant and go, ooh, I gotta have that. And that one too, put some of those in, and some of that one. And oh my gosh, gotta have where have we got room for a yellow magnolia? There's gotta be a place for these things.
How about one of those?
And it just gets to where you've got so much stuff going on that you can't even remember what you started out doing in the first place. And it goes for perennials and shrubs and the whole shot. And you can see it all over. We all know the gardener's house. Oh yeah, that's the gardener, that's for sure. And it's all over the world. This is in the Netherlands. And you can see that some people here are a little on the crazy side for collecting plants. And it doesn't get better, it gets worse.
This is
as you add,
local.
add more stuff. And we've personally helped people who said, I need something to keep me busy at home. Can we have something else? So we put in gardens like this, which are great for the person who wanted something to do, but not for somebody who didn't want to spend all their time outside. He didn't want to spend all his time outside. We've also been in the position of being asked by people, out of control, help me sort this out. And I will tell you that I sorted out Judith's garden probably five times. Yeah, right. And every time I sorted it out, she unsorted it again, because collectors, that's who collectors are. And you have to explain them to other people. I was working in this garden in Boston when one of the neighbors walked by on the sidewalk and said, you know what's wrong with this garden? I said, no, what's wrong with this garden? Too much stuff, he said. I said, well, you got somebody here who likes their variety of plants and doesn't mind unplanting and replanting things. So we asked someone to talk to you who is a true collector of plants today. Pierre Bennerup's been among perennials his all his life. I understand that he was 5 when he was here at his father's nursery. His father founded Sunny Border Nursery in Connecticut. And under Pierre, it became one of the country's largest wholesale perennial growers. That's an aerial view of it and of one of the growing houses. And even though he's celebrating his 90th birthday with us, everybody raise a glass right now. Those of you who take a sip, raise a glass to Pierre's 90th year. And he says that he retired in 2017 when he closed Sunny Border. Every time we try to track him down and say, let's see something, let's see what we can do on a Saturday morning, he's off potting and selling perennials at the farmer's market. So been around perennials his whole life, and he's not just a plant lover, he's a pioneer in the whole field. Growers all across the country know that, as quote, his vision and contributions made the modern perennial plant business in the US what it is today. You don't have to look far to see his impact on the perennial industry. He's got more than 50 varieties of plants that he introduced himself. And when he took over his father's business in the 60s, and he had an English degree from Princeton, he did not intend to work in the nursery industry, but he took over the nursery. And at that time, perennials were sold primarily as bare root plants. You remember that. I remember that, ordering things in the mail and you get this bunch of roots and don't know that it's going to grow into that Veronica. He was one of the first people to grow perennials for sale in pots. He looked at, well, it's okay, he can tell you if he wants to. But once people could see the flowers and the leaf, perennial sales just went through the roof. Little things like that, connections that make a difference. And under Bennerup, the Sunny Border Nursery was also one of the first growers to produce plants by tissue culture, taking cuttings of plants, microscopic cuttings of plants, and growing them on in test tubes, so that instead of taking 20 years to get a new variety to in enough volume to sell nationally, they could sell things in 2 or 3 years. So that allowed him to introduce and sell a lot of plants that he found in his travels. He'd go all around the country. He had a network of people, still has a network of people, and has been on plant hunting expeditions around the world. So his nursery's catalog grew. And at one point, he said he had about 100 types of phlox offered just in the catalog. In your garden, you're probably growing some of his introductions.
Probably.
Yeah, if you're growing Sunny Border Blue Veronica or Fire Witch Dianthus or Kim's Mophead or actually, I think Chrysogonum Pierre was named for him as a, because you don't usually name your own introductions with your name. And he loves seeing people get hooked on plants. He is one of the reasons that there is a perennial plant association where growers and marketers and students meet together and share all of the tips and information that they need that they weren't able to get in touch with each other before the internet came out. At their conferences, you see the perennials used this way, for instance, and Pierre and Cheryl, his wife Cheryl, send us pictures of these things if we're not there. He's known all around the world, the perennials, and he's been recognized by organizations like the American Horticultural Society that made him his 2018 Liberty Hyde Bailey Award and wrote this article in their magazine about him. So we asked him to share his idea about collecting perennials. And we just wanted to start you off understanding what a collector is and know that despite all of his accomplishments, he's still just one of us. He identifies himself as a plant nerd. He says his own collection is kind of insane. This is his garden, his previous garden in Connecticut. And you can see he's dealing with the same issues that we're dealing with. Do you see the deer pruned yew hedge? He is a normal person. He says, every time I see a new plant, I can't resist it. I have to own it. I have a garden full of specimen plants and a nursery full of more plants than we could ever possibly market. At one time, we had about 5,000 varieties growing at the nursery. Less than half of them actually listed in the catalog. So please enjoy meeting and hearing from Pierre and from his wife, Cheryl, who, if I was giving you a bio on her accomplishments in horticulture, it would double this introduction. Chat your questions or raise your hand when we get to the question breaks anytime, because talking perennials, that's what Pierre and Cheryl like to do. Here's what we did, Pierre. We took your list because Pierre sent us a list. He said, if they're for collectors, I'm going to recommend these plants. We took that list and Stephen has illustrated it. We're going to let Pierre talk about whichever plant he wants. We have all of the list up here as it is on the note-taking guide. Pierre, you can pick any plant you want in any order you want, and we will jump to the pictures. And you can tell us how we did with finding pictures for you, and you can tell this wonderful group of people what you think about growing those plants. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, I think we should take them in order of the way they're presented. I'll go through as many as we have time to do. First of all, a couple definitions. We'll talk about collectors. The first thing you need to know, what is a perennial plant? And the classic definition is any plant that would bloom year to year had it lived in the first place.
Yeah.
Second definition is what is a collector of plants? Now, there's a distinction and a very big difference between a collector of plants and a gardener. A gardener is a person that wants a lot of very beautiful combinations of plants that will bloom, you know, in sequence, of course, according to across the season. And a collector, well, I'm going to tell you a little story as briefly as I can. My late friend Fred McGurdy visited a collector, an Englishman who was also a professor at Columbia. I don't remember his name, but that's not the point. And then Fred wandered through his garden and saw this lovely primrose that he commented on. And the host said, well, I have two. Here, I'll do you one. He dug it up, gave it to Fred. Fred took it home, then wrote a note back saying, thank you very much for this primula. I think he called back, actually. You'll be happy to know I divided it up into 15 divisions. And the collector said, whatever would you want this for? He was an Englishman. And that's a collector. A collector wants one plant of everything. Two is too many, you give that one away. Has nothing to do with a gardener. I mean, it's a totally different thing.